For more on this, Josh Hammer joins us now. He's the host of The Josh Hammer Show and senior counsel at the Article 3 Project. Josh, good to have you back with us, sir.
Vince, always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
It's amazing. What an amazing and unfortunate saga. So, Fani Willis, how big of a deal is this, in your view, to have a local prosecutor, Fulton County prosecutor, thrown completely off the case that she brought?
It's a very big deal. I mean, as Joe Biden, when he was vice president of the United States, said about Obamacare back when Democrats passed it, it's a big effing deal. A word that I'm not going to say on your airwaves, Vince. But
Thank you.
This is a very, very rare development. Something that does not happen very, very frequently. I mean, you have to really, really, really mess up, I guess, basically, is the point that I'm making here. But that's exactly what Fani Willis did. I mean, she did really, really, really mess up here. She messed up horrifically when she hired her extramarital affair illicit lover, Nathan Wade, someone who had, to his own admission, had no knowledge whatsoever on the underlying statute here, Georgia's RICO statute. She hired him to be the so-called special prosecutor on this case, thereby kicking him back $700,000 of hard-earned Georgia taxpayer dollars. Fani Willis failed to disclose that there. And the rest was history. I mean, there was only one remedy in this case, Vince, and this was the proper remedy there. Frankly, the district court judge, Scott McAfee, should have done this back in March. He wrote a lot of the correct things in his opinion, but he didn't really have the courage of his convictions, is what I said at the time there.
Yeah.
And finally, we have resolution. Fani's appealing this. It's worth noting. She is appealing today's decision to the Georgia Supreme Court, so it could theoretically change from here, but that's a very, very right-of-center court. I don't see it happening, honestly.
Yeah, and you know, my impression was that local judge, Scott McAfee, the reason he didn't eject Fani Willis entirely from the case was that there was something very cozy about all of the lawyers in that courtroom. They all knew each other, all local judges and prosecutors. They all have worked together in some capacity in the past. So it was almost like he was apologizing for having to even talk about all of this. And he said, well, just remove the appearance of the conflict, and that's good enough. But to most people, that wasn't good enough, was it?
No, it wasn't. This is the problem that a lot of judges have. What Scott McAfee did here in this decision, I think it was back in March 15th, if I recall the date, he was basically taking a page out of the John Roberts playbook. This is a patented Chief Justice John Roberts move. If you're a court watcher, Vince, like I am, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. John Roberts, at the level of the U.S. Supreme Court, loves this idea that he can just give a little breadcrumbs to people on the right, give a little breadcrumbs to people on the left. It's just naked, transparent politicking, trying to make everyone happy at the same time. The obvious problem, whether you're a judge, whether you're a congressman, a senator, a president, or frankly, whether you're even a CEO or you're in the corporate sphere, typically speaking, when you simultaneously try to make everyone happy at the same time, you're going to end up making no one happy. And that is exactly what happened here for Scott McAfee back in March. It was a very clumsy, cumbersome attempt at Solomonically splitting the baby, so to speak. He was trying to appease Nathan Wade and Fani Willis by saying that, okay, in this case, one of you can stay on the case as long as the other leaves there. But that's not actually going to make Fani Willis particularly happy because she lost her chief prosecutor and also, again, her extramarital affair lover.
Yeah.
And it's not going to make Donald Trump and Mark Meadows and the various other co-defendants there happy either because the sham prosecution continues. So, look, it's a hard lesson learned, but it's frankly a tale as old as time when you think about it because, again, just to reiterate what I just said, when you try to make everyone happy, Vince, you end up making no one happy.
Josh Hammer, what does this mean for President Trump and his co-defendants in this case? Because as I understand it, the court today in Georgia, the appeals court, has disqualified Fani Willis, thrown her off the case. But they declined to dismiss the indictment itself, which means what? It's an orphan indictment waiting for some prosecutor who might want to pick it up to do so?
Basically, yes. So the immediate next thing that's going to happen, I believe Fani Willis has probably already filed her formal appeal to the Georgia Supreme Court. So the Georgia Supreme Court will likely now hear this case. They could just refuse to hear it, but this is a high-profile case, so they likely will agree to hear it. I was looking at the Georgia Supreme Court's partisan composition earlier today, actually. Every single one of the justices, other than one, was appointed by a Republican governor, and the one who was not appointed was he became a justice during Brian Kemp's governorship. He just wasn't appointed by him. So it's a conservative court is a point that I'm making there, and it just beggars belief that they would come to any other conclusion other than the one that the Georgia Court of Appeals reached today.
Right.
So let's assume that Fani Willis loses there, which she's going to do. So after that, to use the legalese, the mandate would then go back to Scott McAfee, who is the district court judge, and at that point, he would basically then punt it to a body that's known as the Prosecuting Attorneys Council of Georgia. It's basically the statewide body that oversees local prosecutors in the state. In this case, it is a collaboration of 6 specific DAs as well as 3 solicitors general. Uh-huh. And at that point, they would have the unenviable task of seeing if there's a possibility of reassigning this case to a different prosecutor. But as even Peter Skandalakis, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, who's the executive director of this prosecutorial oversight body, he actually told CNN earlier today, he gave a direct quote where he said, quote, "It won't be an easy lift. It's not going to be an easy lift to find a prosecutor willing to take this case." And Vince, there's a very simple explanation for that, which is that Donald Trump's about to be president of the United States, for goodness sake. Yes. And there's not going to be a prosecutor necessarily outside of Fulton County, which is by far the most liberal left-wing county in Georgia. That's where the city of Atlanta is. I mean, good luck finding another county to bring this one.
Well, it also strikes me that there's no real evidence that President Trump or any of his co-defendants actually did anything wrong, too. So the idea here is she's bringing charges in what appear to be a very novel and specious way. So already it's like it was a very low IQ prosecution to begin with. If you're a prosecutor worth your salt in Georgia, you're not touching this for political reasons, one, but probably more importantly, my impression is that there really isn't any good case law to support a prosecution like this.
That's exactly right. Look, RICO, a lot of states have mini RICO statutes, including Georgia. It's modeled after the congressional RICO statute. RICO emerged at a federal level in the 20th century as a way to go after the mob, as a way to literally go after La Cosa Nostra. And what they're doing here by bringing this particular case on these grounds is they are analogizing Donald Trump and his team of lawyers after the 2020 election to the mafia, like literally to Michael Corleone and whatnot there, right? And that in and of itself is just profoundly offensive when it comes to basic free speech norms, basic First Amendment principles. Frankly, when it comes to the legal profession itself, I mean, you're prosecuting people like Rudy Giuliani, Jenna Ellis, various other Trump attorneys there for doing what? For doing what exactly? For zealously representing their clients the exact same way that they learned in law school, that I learned in law school there. But the ultimate thing that led Georgia specifically to bring this case was the January 3rd, 2021 phone call between Donald Trump and Brad Raffensperger there. Uh-huh. And your mileage may vary as to what you think about that phone call in particular, but Vince, there's one thing that we should all be able to agree upon. Donald Trump has every First Amendment free speech right in the world to say what he wants to say to another federal official. In fact, you could make a plausible argument that was actually not even a political phone call. It was actually maybe it was even a presidential phone call. This man was the head of the United States Department of Justice at the time. If there is an issue pertaining to voter fraud in a presidential election, he has the full ability to make whatever calls that he feels are necessary to try to root out voter fraud.
He has an inherent interest in the sanctity of federal elections as the chief executive of the United States. So you're right about that. In fact, that would probably, based on the Supreme Court's ruling, fall under presidential immunity, actually, as an official act of the president. But additionally, it strikes me that this Georgia case was always completely anti-democratic in the sense that they're criminalizing a political candidate from auditing the results of an election to ensure that they were legitimate. That's about as third world as it gets, isn't it?
It absolutely is. Unfortunately, it's just a microcosm of all the lawfare in general that we've seen, which has truly been as third world as it gets everywhere you look. I mean, whether it's Fani Willis, whether it's Alvin Bragg, whether it's Jack Smith there. I mean, this whole descent into third world, sub-Saharan Africa, tin pot dictatorship style politicking I mean, it's been horrific, Vince. And, some people say that this has been a crossing of the Rubicon. I don't think that does it enough justice. The Rubicon's actually a fairly small river in Italy. This is like crossing the Atlantic Ocean. I just don't know how you possibly come back from this, honestly. I have some ideas, and we'll see what Donald Trump does to possibly act on those ideas come January 20th. But it's absolutely anti-democratic there. Look, if you want Donald Trump to go away, okay, if that is your prior, if that's what you want to do, the obvious way to make Donald Trump go away is to defeat him at the ballot box. It hasn't happened, other than the disputed 2020 election itself. It didn't happen in the 2016 primary. It didn't happen in the 2024 primary. It didn't happen in the 2024 general. If you want him to go away, did you defeat him in the ballot box, or in the alternative, if they had actually gotten their impeachment, after January 6th, January 6th was as big a deal as they say it was, and they had impeached him after the fact there, then he would not have been able to actually run for president again. That is the remedy that the Constitution's framers prescribed in a situation like this. The actual check on a situation like that is the impeachment remedy, but if the impeachment remedy fails, that's the only reason that you've seen this lawfare in the first place.
Right. Well, as you point out, they did impeach him, but they didn't convict him in the Senate, and that's the game, and that's how the Constitution deals with all of this. And now, if they want to get rid of him, they should wait for him to conclude his second term. That's what happened. He got elected again. Hey, in the meantime, Josh Hammer, I'm so grateful for you coming on as always. People can find you on the Josh Hammer Show and at the Article 3 Project, sir. Thank you very much.